Alright, this is Kennedy from Hill Country Weavers, and I'm going to show you today how to do an applied crochet edging on a woven piece. So this is a shawl that Suzanne wove using the Ritual Dyes Undine, which is a cotton linen blend, and she did it with 3 colors, which means there's some long floats along the selvage. Um, so you might want to use this, for instance, in this case, we're using it to hide those floats along the edge. You might also be using this to join several woven pieces together. So if you had several panels and you wanted to piece them into a blanket, if you wanted to piece them into like a little shrug. So if you want some ideas of things you can do with this technique, go to our website, hillcountryweavers.com, and you can look at a bunch of our woven patterns. There's some for garments, there's some for blankets. There's a whole lot in our original book, Kismet, that uses this kind of a technique. So to start with, we're going to use some extra yarn from our woven piece. And like I said, we're just going to basically work a little bit of single crochet up along the edge to clean it up. And when you're deciding what kind of hook that you want to use, you want something that's small enough that you can easily get through the fabric without like spreading the the picks too much. So it may be a smaller hook size than you would usually use for this yarn, but it just needs to be able to go through, and you just need it basically as big as you can get without seriously disrupting the fabric. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in 2 ends. So I've got my warp going this way and my weft going this way. So I've got 2 ends, which are your warp threads here. And then you can also see I've got these kind of long floats hanging out on the edge. So when I go in, I'm going to come in 2. You can go in just 1. It's going to be kind of a preference of the look that you like. So kind of do a couple of stitches as an experiment when you're doing this to just see what look you like better. So you have a couple of options when you're doing along an edge like this. So you can pick up and then tuck the tail in as we work, and that's what I'm going to show you. But if you like, you could also, since this is right on the edge here, basically just thread this end into your fringe, and that would work fine as well. So, but this is a good way to know how to do it, because if you can tuck the end in, especially if you've like cut this end or you're tucking it under, it'll stay out of your way. So we're not going to start with a slip knot. We're just going to start with a loose piece of yarn, and I'm going to go into the fabric right where I want to pull my first loop up. And I'm just going to hook the yarn and pull it through. So you can see I have a loop on my hook. I have the tail here, and then I have the yarn that's attached to the ball here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that tail right along the edge. So as we work, we're actually going to be weaving the tail in. So we're going to pull this yarn through and pull through a loop. I'm going to skip a couple of picks, and how far in you go will depend on the look that you want, how tight you want your edge to be, how big your crochet hook is, how thick your yarn is. If you haven't done this a few times, it's not a bad idea to do like a small gauge swatch using the hook that you're going to be using and the yarn that you're going to be using, and then kind of compare that to the edge just to see like how frequently you want to pick up. You can also just kind of eyeball it, but if you're going to do that, make sure you're kind of letting yourself be a little bit looser than you might be otherwise. It is always a danger when you do this that you'll end up with a really tight edge. It's woven fabric, so it's not as big of a concern as if you were doing this on a knit fabric, but it's something to think about. So I'm going to skip a couple of picks. I'm going to go up here, and you can see I'm coming under that tail. I'm going to hook the yarn, pull it back through, and then I'm going to hook this yarn and pull it through both. So again, we're going to come up a couple of picks. I'm going to go in here, hook the yarn, pull it through, make another loop, pull that one through as well. And you can see that's starting to create just a little crochet, it's just a little single crochet edge. So if you have problems with your selvages, if they're a little bit loose, or if you're doing a pattern like this where you're carrying the yarn up, and you can kind of see there that there's these kind of like floats on the side, this is a good way to hide them, to hide any kind of unevenness you might have. So it's a nice trick if you are a beginning weaver, but maybe you have some experience with crochet. So again, I'm going to jump up a little bit, come in, pull it through, make sure that it's not too tight, give it a little tug there, pull this loop through. And we'll go all the way up. I'm going to go one more time here, pull through, again. You can see that's giving us this just nice little finish right here. So go up, in, pull through again. Now, how long you want to weave this tail in is kind of up to you. I would do maybe a couple of inches just to be sure, since this is a cotton linen blend. If it was a wool blend, I'd probably say that's enough right there. So it's kind of your call. Pull through. You can also go further into the piece or not as far into the piece depending on the look that you want. So again, that's something that you can kind of experiment with and see what works for you, what works for the piece that you're working on. But the nice thing with this is because it's a relatively open weave, it's a relatively large set, which is what you're usually going to get on a rigid heddle loom. It's actually very easy to space these really nice and even. So that is all you need to know to do an applied single crochet edge to your woven piece. You can see that that gives you a really nice finish, a really nice edge, where before we were a little wobbly. It's also kind of a nice color accent. So if you wanted to, you could do this in a really contrasty color to put a really bright accent along the edge. So that's an idea to try too. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email over at hillcountryweavers@gmail.com. Thanks.